imagine what I saw in those 32 years. Like, no internet, right? Just regular old kids using typewriters and stuff. I mean, maybe some of them had word processors at home. But so went from that to AI by the time I finished. And I saw, this sort of evolution of the cell phones. First they were the flip phones, and then, then they were the smartphones. And I think that in one way is my perspective. And I would just like to say, also for the record, as far as, Rob Hunter, like, the phones are great. I mean, it's how we work now, right? I mean, not many people have landlines anymore. It's how we communicate. It's what we do. Amazingly powerful device that, it's going to get you places, right? Thank God you got your Google Maps and everything else. And, what a powerful device. And so actually, that's a great place for me to springboard to kids and this powerful device. Go ahead.
Can we just say everybody's name and what
Sure.
school they're from? Because I think we have a Long Trail mom here.
Oh, great.
And Mems. Mems and Long
And
Trail.
Mems, okay.
Yeah.
And what's your name?
Lindsay.
Lindsay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm Eric Montbryan. I'm from the town of Wells.
Hey, kid, who are you?
Carolyn
hi.
Plunkett. I'm Mary
Nice.
Plunkett in Middletown Springs.
I'm Andrew McKeever. I'm with the Manchester Journal, and I'm from Sunderland.
I'm Casey Bradley, and I have a daughter at Men's.
And my name's Hannah Bingham, and I have two children at Red Fox, which is an
Yep.
elementary school.
Yep.
But they probably will eventually end up at Long Trail.
Great.
Okay, great. So, I mean, part of what we know, right, is that, I mean, I guess to speak plainly, we know that these phones can manipulate, right? We know that these algorithms are there. We know that kids are seeing what somebody wants them to see, whether it's advertising, the wrong sites, you name it. But I do want to kind of just focus as a teacher and say, like, what I really like about this bill is if we could just take the phones out of the equation from just the beginning of school to the end, right? Now, I actually, on the Ed Committee, which I'm sitting on at the House, there's a teacher who sits across from me, and I was kind of having a sidebar conversation about this bill. It was very interesting because she's a past Teacher of the Year, and she said, I totally disagree. And she had a couple of good reasons. She said, well, what about the kid who is the primary caretaker of their little sibling, and they need to hear? Okay, so, all right, that might be a case. On the other hand, what did we do when we were kids? I'll meet you at the bus at 3 o'clock or whatever. I'll see you there. But then, the school bell rings at 2:35 or 2:45. You check your phone. Oh, there's a message from your sister, whatever, which is going to be a little bit later. I mean, I do think that there are ways that kid can be able to communicate. But, so what I watched literally over the years was kids more or less being attentive, and then buzz in the pocket. You just lose them. I mean, you just lose them. And believe me, a phone is a hell of a lot more exciting than Rob Hunter, right? I mean, whatever's on there has got to be better than the Catcher in the Rye. I mean, I don't know, right? So this is what teachers are up against. And so in a small way, but because you know a lot more than I do. I mean, I've read a lot of articles. I know that there's a lot of stuff that just sucks kids in, right? Maybe in a positive way and also in a negative way. And I know that in schools we get an awful lot of bullying on the phones, for one. We know that the levels of anxiety, I mean, I can even tell you, like, over the course of my teaching, like, this whole thing about anxiety. Wow. Maybe there's a lot of reasons for that, but I don't think the phones help. I don't think that what comes on the phones help. and I actually, another counter argument, which I think is a pretty good one, about phones. I have a daughter who's a therapist, and she says, kids who are marginalized from one way or another can find allies online. Well, that may be true. That may be true. But again, I mean, I'm pretty hardcore when it comes to school. Andrew can tell you, I taught his kids. I taught everybody's kids in this town. Just focusing on school should be the thing that we do, right? No matter if that's the science class, the math class, the English class, the history class, the foreign language. And I do believe, really, that it's a no good thing in school. It's a distraction that doesn't need to be there. And I honestly don't know how young parents do it these days, how you juggle the phone thing. And I would actually love to hear about that. I was teaching with a former student, John Wilson, over at Burton. And, I remember when his kids were, his oldest one was getting into middle school, and his own level of anxiety about really kind of wanting to delay giving the phone, and but not just the pushback, but then but Dad, all of my friends have phones kind of thing, and it's got to be tough to be the odd man out if you're the odd man out, or do you just say, hey, flip phone's good for now? I mean, social pressures, I don't know, when you're a kid. All these things have changed, definitely. And this isn't my world. I mean, I went to school a long time ago. there were a lot of worse things to do. No kidding. In Attleboro, Massachusetts, there were a lot worse things. But anyway, I can take questions. I mean, I hope that's a good level of introduction. Again, Laura, I appreciate all of your work and your research about everything from anxiety to, I mean, what are some of the other issues that you have researched? I would love to hear.
Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead, let loose.
Come on.
Both barrels.
Well, I think what would be helpful is we'll do two things. Going through the briefing document, actually,
Yeah.
to help talk through it, because we have compiled the common pushback, specifically that we have heard from lawmakers and parents that have concerns. So we want to make sure everybody understands how do we respond. And this graph to your left, Rob, is such an important graph. That's why I took it out of a peer-reviewed journal of psychiatry and glued up to a 2x3 foot poster, because it tells the story, which is told over and over again in the book The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt and by many other authors, that this graph, if you look, follow the x-axis to the left, starts around 2000. This is reporting on suicide, intentional self-poisoning, major depressive episodes, and depressive symptoms in girls generally from the age of 10 to 14. So you see the trend is relatively stable, and then when you see the trend go up, if you can zoom in and find the year 2011, 2012, that is when we see a sharp increase in suicide, intentional self-poisoning, major depressive episodes, and it goes up exponentially. This graph is not a standalone graph. If we look at, even in Vermont, this is national data, but even in Vermont, we see the same data for suicide-related emergency room visits in youth. Same pattern. Poisoning data from the Poison Control Center, because they keep very good data, accidental or intentional poisonings, self-poisonings. That looks exactly the same. There was another peer-reviewed article written by a physician actually out of Dartmouth looking at, and it was a very interesting article, and I can give you all of these citations for those who like to read fine print peer-reviewed research, that the article was saying we don't have enough inpatient psychiatric beds for children. The reason children are getting hospitalized today is different. There's not as many broken bones. There's more kids having a psychiatric crisis, and they are being put in the hospital for it. And again, this physician at Dartmouth took the data showing that and shows the exact same trend as this graph. So a lot of people, a lot of the naysayers who are funded by commercial and industry interests, right? Because this is bad for business, for Meta and well, I don't know if there's going to still be a TikTok or not, but Google, you name them. It's bad for the online industry. It's bad for business. What that we're showing, these are not really, we don't have to keep describing them as tools with benefits for children. If we were to only come in from another planet and just read the research and not understand sort of the cultural factor of how it's been marketed as a tool, we would come in and say, these are health-harming products. So I'm a nurse, I'm a public health nurse, and that's how I talk about them. I say these are health-harming products, and that completely changes the frame of how we talk about this. Once we know something is a health-harming product, do we put it in a school? So I was at Staples yesterday making that I made this graph last year. This is my new poster for this year. This is our goat, actually, in Middletown Springs. His name is Etienne, and he posed for the photo with my kids. My daughter put the scarf on him. This kid wants one free schools in Vermont. Tell your legislators you do too. Anyway, so this is my new 2x3 foot investment. My husband's like, God, you keep on spending so much money at Staples. But the Staples...
Royalties for the goat.
Yeah, right.
How you gonna work out?
Somebody, I'm sure, is going to pass legislation about that.
Yeah.
The point, not you. The point is, I unrolled the poster because I was so proud of it to show to the guy behind the counter at Staples to say, look at this really beautiful poster we made. And he read it, and he said, yeah, when I was in school, we actually had a smoking room. Wow.
Yeah.
And he actually wasn't that older than me. I mean, I'm almost 50, and maybe he was in his early 50s. And so he went to school somewhere where they had a smoking room for the kids in high school. And now, so that used to be the norm, but it was not healthy.
Right.
And so this is a norm right now, but it is an unhealthy norm that we need to change. And so from my perspective as a nurse saying this is a public health issue, it's a public health issue because we are seeing these products inform the health of an entire population of children across the country. And again, those of you who have read Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation book or follow him, this is not just the US, this is many other countries around the world where the same thing happened. And I just wanted to say, sorry, that date of 2011, 2012 is not arbitrary. What happened then? Again, we have consumer research, so a totally separate box of data telling us that in that year is when there was more uptake and use of these products, these health-harming products, by our youth population. You see, I'm talking about this, how we talk about health harms, right? I'm not saying, oh, that's when everybody started using social media. I'm saying this is a health-harming product. Kids started being exposed to this health-harming product in this year. And when we talk about it in more objective language like that, that's how we frame and kind of combat the naysayers that want to say it's the environment. The environment's what's making kids anxious and disturbed. Well, if that was true, again, there are authors such as Dr. Jean Twenge that dissect the research and tell us if that was true, we would have seen this trend happen a long time ago. People say it's the economy. No, it's not, because the economy actually started to improve a few years before this graph started going up. So there are a lot of claims that are debunked, and I can share that with anybody, but to move forward, if we want to just walk through what the because that's kind of the point, what's the legislation, and then what are the frequently asked questions about it. Does everybody have a copy?
Yep.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
before you
Please.
start on that? Just, so I only have young kids in schools right now, and I've read all these books, so I'm all on board with with what you're saying. But I'm just curious, does anyone have information? So you're saying you were a teacher until 2023, but I'm curious, like what are the rules about phones right now in schools where there's more kids that have phones, middle and high school? Like, does anybody have is it just free for all? Like they can use them, or do they?
Well, this year
I can
changed.
speak
Go ahead.
to that.
This year changed if I heard.
Yeah, I work at BBA, I'm the librarian at
Okay.
BBA, and I'm in classrooms a lot. That's part of my
Okay.
job, is to go around the school and assist in classrooms. And there have been teachers for years that would have classroom policies that you had to park your phone. This year, I think it stepped up a notch, and it is definitely a top-down policy. Administration has said that there will not be phones in the classroom. So this is a very cool structure. We don't have anything like that, but there are pockets or there are banks, and students come in and they park their phone for the block.
For that
For
particular
that
class.
particular block.
So then maybe between classes,
Between
they're
classes,
still.
they do
Okay.
have access, and, you know, during lunch, they have access, during flex block, they have access.
See.
But in the classroom, they don't have access. And I want to say that I heard from the dean's office this year that numbers are way down for all sorts of instances. That there are a lot of issues that come with cell phones, infractions and bullying, I mean, you know, everywhere, and I think that all of that is down because there isn't the opportunity to have that kind of interaction where the students are interacting in person
During class.
during class.
So
And I think
hypothetically,
probably
that's-
it's decreasing between class time. It's not that they
Right.
grab their phones and you can actually see faces as you
Yeah.
walk around.
But really what the legislation is aiming to do is say no phones during the entirety of the school day. So that means like they would park them or not bring them, one or the other. That would be the rules. And then it would be like not even at lunch, not even, so that's really what we're, like, the general consensus is they're already not really supposed to have them during class. But this would help all the other times as well. Is that what we're kind of?
And I think a lot of schools are tackling this,
Right.
you know,
Like
out of
individually.
necessity, right? I mean, because there are a couple of years there, it was not good.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I mean, they're consuming, they can be very consuming. Yeah.
I think like Long Trail and MEMS have the policy of parking it, but it can be in their bag, you know, so it's not like official parking,
Right.
from what I understand anyway.
Right.
And so like they're not to have them from bell to bell, but it's not like, I don't think it's as like
Right.
whole as this would look, you know, for it to like, it's off, it's parked, and your brain can relax, you know, for that whole time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I can talk about, as a school board member, our supervisory union, we looked at schools and our cell phones in schools last year. Basically, all the schools within our supervisory union, the Greater Rutland County, it's basically administrator set. So the school has their own basic, you know, guidelines or policy. There's nothing within the whole supervisory union, and so they manage it, and it's, you know, just like as you said, they're supposed to keep them in their backpacks away throughout the school day. So, you know, but there's still access, so.
Yeah, one thing I've heard from Pulteney teachers is that at times there's teachers who are stricter with the
Yeah.
policy than not, and then almost they're the bad guys. So
Yeah.
if you have a teacher who's, you know, have it, you don't have it, whatever,
Right.
I think it kind of falls on the teacher's back to enforce that rule
Yep.
more often than not.
And, you know, I will say, and we know this, anytime that, in any arena, any confrontation that you ever have to make, is like, we know scientifically your blood pressure goes up, all these other things happen. So if you're that teacher constantly saying, Billy, would you put it away? Like, you like, all of these things happen to you chemically. And even if, you know, so if you're doing that 20 times a day, I mean, how do you feel when you go home? Like, I mean, and do you want to be that teacher? I mean, that's the other thing too. And so I think that a nice thing about the legislation is that just takes that all off the table. Like, it's just, you put the phone away. You put it in after school, whatever. I mean, that's like, who said that? Give your brain a break. Like, just
Yeah, well,
like,
that's like from the book, you know, they say that like
Yeah.
every time you pick up your phone, like it resets your attachment to it. And so for kids, like even if it's between classes or even if it's at lunch, they're reconnecting with
Yeah.
that attachment,
Right.
and then they have to
Right.
restart like their focus process.
Right, and we also know too, that as human beings, what we're doing is really important. You know, when we look each other in the eye, and I mean, here's here's my librarian. I mean, this is literature. This is about books. We are human beings, you know, and to put human beings back where they belong, you know, as important, whether that's in class or the kids in the hallway. You know, there's something to be said for that. That's not that bad. I mean, that's, and again, not to, you know, get too crazy, but like, I believe in that stuff, you know, and I'm not just saying that because I'm an old guy. Like, I believe in that stuff.
It's gonna be an adjustment for parents. So I was in a classroom the other day and the phones were parked and someone accidentally didn't turn off their sound, and so I could look over, Dad's calling. So,
During school time.
Or
during
actually,
school time, during class time.
although
yeah.
Margie, I got to tell you how many kids have said it's my mom, and they just put their friends in
Okay,
as
you're
mom.
right, I might be-
Your friends.
You're right.
I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, kids are a lot smarter than we are. Do you remember up in the mountain campus, they had to put them in a bucket when they got there? They're putting their dummy phones in there. They're putting their old ones in there. You know, like. yeah. So.
Yeah, I've heard kids are doing that in high school.
Yeah.
They'll have an old phone or a broken
Oh yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
They have to have a scrambler. We need a
Something.
scrambler.
There's gotta be something, right? I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to know like where we were starting. So.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. This is Robin Younger. I'm in Bedford. And one of
I think it's as loud as it goes.
the sort of points I want to lift up is that my son went phone free and social media free. And he had a smartphone for years and turned it in for a flip phone and challenged himself because he felt that he wasn't focusing enough on his work and his athletics. And so for 6 months he took on this project, and he still is phone free. One of the things that he said was that it actually, ironically, relieved social stress. And stress of having to be in connection with people that are not in front of him.
Yeah.
And I wonder, when the pushback of sort of this is a loss of freedom, it's ironically, for me, my son became more free.
Mhm. Yep. I can see that.
And I also think that when schools don't adopt the bell-to-bell policy, they're losing out on true community building. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think you're right on. And the thing is too, I mean, you know, we have no historical context for this. I mean, this is just kind of like happened, right? I mean, over the last decade or so. This is we've seen this grow, and so it's like, okay, so now we get this situation, but there's so much research out there, right? So
Right.
much good research saying, yeah.
And I think once kids learn the research, they will want to make changes, and I've seen that. I've
Yeah.
seen kids that they gray out their phones because it's not as appealing when it's gray as opposed to color.
Interesting.
You can add apps to your phone so that if I hit my social media, it tells me to take a breath, or I have to pause and then maybe I won't click through.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I think a lot of kids recognize that it's
Yeah.
taking over their brains and their lives in a way that they want to have more control over.
Right.
So just to take advantage of the.
One last thing. Sometimes I wonder if the kids will look back and say, why didn't the adults push more
Yeah.
to take this from us?
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, again, we keep saying it's unprecedented because it's new and we don't know what to do, but it's not. Again, if we look at the data, and I will give you anybody, I have a 14-page reference sheet with all of the peer-reviewed citations on this topic. that is not exhaustive. I actually only created it so when we drafted this legislation with our senators and representatives, the Legislative Council needed to have, peer-reviewed references to support the claims that we put in, which is nice and reassuring that they do that. So I had to provide research to support each claim in the legislation. So that's why I compiled this. I can share it with any of you. But the point is, we do have precedents that when we have this huge weight of the evidence, we call it, mountains of research pointing to harms on a product, the precedent is we do what we can do to protect the child, to protect youth. And in this case, we see this trend. These products are causing a severe mental health crisis. It is not the only cause, but it is a significant one enough for us to see a graph that looks like this. So that is the precedent we have, that we put policies in place to mitigate the harms. So people push back and say, well, it's only the 7 or 8 hours of the day. What about every other time? Well, from the public health model, school is the microphone for what's healthy in the community. Again, we took cigarettes out of schools. I don't think there are Coca-Cola vending machines in schools anymore. So this is the same thing. It is at least signaling to the community, and it's messaging to the community. Hey, we don't endorse these health-harming products anymore. And the other framework, and then we're going to start this, we're not taking anything away from kids. We are actually giving kids back their childhood. We're giving them back their school day. We are giving teachers back that space to build those relationships that are healthy. And absolutely, to your point, why bell to bell? Because school isn't just about the classroom time. School is about building those skills of communication and resiliency that happen when kids have to have communications and interactions in the hallway and at lunch. So with that, I think we've gone over sort of the why. If you look at the briefing document, what does the legislation say? There's 2 parts to this legislation, super simple. The first part says bell to bell, phones and all personal electronic devices. So that will also be the smartwatches, the earbuds, eventually those AI glasses that videotape people that are coming out. Any personal wearable device, not the device submitted from the school, assigned from the school, but the personal devices will be locked away, not accessible to the student, bell to bell. With the exception when there is an IEP or a documented medical need, just like for anything else. There are kids that now have their insulin administration monitored with the iPhone. Absolutely, we can make carve-outs for that. But otherwise, it will, when they come in the morning, it's put away. There are many ways to do that that are not expensive. We have this beautiful phone locker right here that was so easy to make. Myself as a nurse and my 14-year-old son made it. He's 15 now. So it's big enough, as you can see, that each compartment will be big enough to fit the earbuds, the watch, the phone. So it all can just go in there. The kids can be assigned a number or put their name on it. And then this model is on wheels, so kids can, put it in there when they come in the morning. It can get wheeled and stored away somewhere if need be, and then brought back out and check out at the end of the day. There are even lower cost ways to do it. In the back, I have a Tupperware full of pencil pouches, a large middle school in Washington, D.C., 600 kids. They come in the morning and there's a table full of Tupperwares, just like that bin, for each class. They put their items in their pencil pouch, $2 pencil pouch with their name on it, and it goes in the bin. And those bins are just stacked, wheeled to the admin office, and then those bins are delivered to their classrooms at the end of the day. They've been doing this for over 1.5 years now, running smooth. Again, costs nothing. So, and those are really the best model because, to your point about the schools that have it's not allowed, but you can keep it in your backpack, there's a really strong study that was done, I believe, at the University of Texas, saying that even just having your phone, even turned off in your backpack, is a cognitive distraction where you will be paying less attention to your teachers and your environment. They did a study really showing that. So even having it in the same room, because they did it in the backpack, they had it in the same room and then outside of the room. The kids with it outside of the room scored better on these tests that they did, and then they published it. again, that study is on that long 14-page research list. I'm happy to show anybody. So that's sort of the why behind the bell-to-bell, and the how. The how is very simple. I mean, I think I want to see some Vermont woodworkers start in fact making this. Right now on the market, you can find them that just have a slot for the phone, but not everything else. And really everything needs to be put away. So the other part of the legislation, which is going to be different, but we really felt there was so much research we had to add it, is that given that even the US Surgeon General said these products are so unsafe, we need warning labels on them. I don't know if you all heard that last year, he announced that. And then actually on September 24th of last year, 2 senators in the US Senate did introduce legislation. It's called the Stop the Scroll Act, which was the warning label legislation, which is required. And that legislation will be reintroduced. So people are taking that seriously and saying these products are so dangerous, we're going to move ahead and put warning labels on social media products. So the logical next step is that schools would stop asking or requiring students to use a product that's so dangerous that the Surgeon General has said we need warning labels. So this legislation, just the point 2 of the legislation, says schools may not ask or require students to use social media. Seems basic enough. Right now, some kids are being asked to use Instagram or Snapchat or any other host of social media products for sports teams, sometimes for school projects. So the legislation just says there are other ways to communicate with kids that are not using a health-harming product, that are not going to bring that kid down a rabbit hole that's going to expose them to explicit suicide content or pornography or fentanyl access, because that really is what happens in one swipe on these products. Some of the research has timed it to the matter of seconds from when kids open up these products to then when they can get offered drugs on platforms like Snapchat. So that's the second part of the legislation. It should be clear, some people are going to give pushback because it's become a norm. People have become so used to using it, and they've kind of forgotten that there are absolutely other ways to communicate with children that don't incur that risk as well. And we're going to get to that in the talking point. So that's what the legislation says, and then the next part of this briefing document goes through really kind of the main points that we hear over and over again. Are there questions right now, or do you want to just move ahead so that everybody understands what, understands the...
Yeah, I had a question.
Yes.
Just what does the legislation say? This isn't the exact language, correct? Because I think in the legislation it says like instruction time in there. I think that's, am I correct? I can't remember. I think that was one of the terminology used instead of like bell to bell. I think it was instruction.
No, the legislation is bell to bell,
Does it
or
say
start
bell?
of the school day till end of the school day. Yeah, the legislation is,
Okay.
yeah.
I told you I read it, but I don't remember the exact language. It kind of leaves it open that the school can say the kids can store their phones in their backpack, if you leave it up,
It does say the school may choose the storage method they want. Now, this bill does not have funding attached to it because it doesn't need to. There was concern that if there was too much prescription about the storage method, it might be harder in terms of pushback. So best practice is stored away, bell to bell, not accessible to the student. The Massachusetts Attorney General yesterday just released legislation into their Senate and House, just came out, and theirs is very strongly prescriptive, and they have some money that they're going to be able to use to encourage that, but that money was not actually in the bill that I read. They were able to get a wealth tax passed last year. So yes, 100%, I'd say there's that liability because there is a school district right now that calls themselves bell to bell, and they are allowing the kids to keep it in their personal locker. And that is not best practice because, as one principal has told me, if we want to have all children be able to access the benefits of this policy, so the most high need children that are most addicted, they're gonna have a hard time with that access in their personal locker. So that school, is not really following the practice. So, yep, if we wanna make the bill stronger and come up and say, nope, we wanna be more prescriptive in the bill, then that's something that, we as parents in the community are gonna have to talk about.
Yeah, I do a lot of school board policy, and so I think, just reading that, if there's a way to, and I get it, I understand, I support, no more unfunded mandates coming out of Montpelier. So I think that if school board did just basically, or school district did approve a policy that
You
kind
can
of
make it
left
stronger.
that. I know, you can
Yeah.
make it, you can make it stronger. But I'm just saying, there's always that possibility that, a school can just say, well, if it's in their backpack, it's not accessible. So that's what I saw in that, in this language, so.
Come and push back, help. Help make the language stronger. And get Eric has written an already draft
Yeah.
model policy for school boards to use. So we need to get that in circulation.
Yep.
'Cause he's the policy chair of the Wells Springs School Board.
GRCSU.
Hmm?
GRCSU.
GRCSU, okay. Yeah. So, absolutely, that's a hole that needs to, that's a weak point of the language. Yeah. So,
Just to
Yes.
say too, the way you said that, I really appreciated the part about think about who is going to benefit or how this is going to be equitable, essentially. Some kids are with their devices more outside of school and therefore more attached to using them. And so just in terms of equity, to have all kids not have any access to their phones is actually the most equitable approach, because if some kid is more attached to theirs, it's going to be harder for them to stay away from it. Those kids are going to get in trouble more, and that's going to look inequitable. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Yeah. So that approach to policy feels important.
And I just want to say too, with the policy aspect is there's still that any district that has to approve a policy, there's still that open opportunity for public input and community input. So I would strongly emphasize that. So if you know that a district is working on a policy, there's still that time for community to weigh in. And I think that's an important piece too, whether you agree with it or not. And then of course it's got to be warned and before it's adopted. So there is a process for, even if this legislation passes, for districts to adopt a policy.
and to your point, the language, the legislative intent, which is at the very top, is important because it captures exactly what you said about the goal these benefits to be accessible for all students. It's the intent of the General Assembly for all students in Vermont to access the benefits of a phone and social media free school environment, which promotes academic focus, improved mental health, and increased social cohesion. So, yeah. So we talked about how schools can do this affordably with some of the examples. The next question is, how do these policies affect administrative workload and students with tight schedules? So that's like your point when there was pushback about an older student that had a younger sibling that they were supporting, right? That student has a tight and busy schedule. So the answer to that, it's written right here, is schools, many just our neighbors in Massachusetts with over 2,000 students in their school alone, have successfully been able to implement this policy already for years. This is not new. A bell-to-bell policy where the phone is not accessible. So actually people say that there's less workload now that this distraction is just gone. So for that pushback of there are some students with extra commitments, work, jobs, etc., we can find workarounds to support those kids, to give them the communication they need. It doesn't have to be the phone in their pocket. So the next one is, how can we help students to learn to use phones responsibly? So the answer is that we do need to teach digital literacy. There are actually books out there. This book, Kids, Brains, and Screens, it's written for anybody ages 10 and up. But really, we just did a course over in Thetford with adults in the community. Robin Yunker on the call here, and a well-known child psychologist, Dr. Ray Chan, taught this course over 5 weeks to parents and grandparents in the community. It's 8 chapters long, and it's made by a nonprofit organization. So the nurse who wrote this started to say, let's just make this accessible for anybody ages 10 and over. So that while some people say, oh, well, we need a teenage-specific one, the content is the same. Adults can benefit from it. And it basically goes through this from a very different perspective than a lot of curriculum that is out there. So a lot of curriculum that's out there that has been compromised by industry maintains the ubiquity model. This is here to stay. We need to teach the kids how to use it. Foregone conclusion, one day they'll be on it, one day they'll use it. When we teach about smoking and alcohol, we don't say, well, one day you're going to drink and smoke, but here's all the health harms. Or one day you're going to use marijuana and here's all the health harms. That's not how we talk about it. This objectively says, this is what brain development looks like. That's in the first 2 chapters. Your brain doesn't finish developing until you're age 25. It talks about which areas of the brain develop when, to especially explain why that adolescent period of 12, 13, 14 is the worst time for kids to get access to these products, because they don't have the fully developed prefrontal cortex to make decisions. So it goes into depth about that, but accessible for a 10-year-old. So I think Caroline, is she 10 yet?
She's 7.
She's
okay.
tall. She's just tall. She looks like she's 10. And then there is a chapter on pornography, and there is a chapter on how algorithms work. And it was really helpful that this course was taught by a psychologist, because he was able to explain as a psychologist how clinically he uses that concept of the different variable rewards and aspects that are incorporated into these algorithms, but basically how they were hijacked by this scientific knowledge about behavior change, and built into these products. So this book covers that. And then it really does talk about ways for parents to make that U-turn if they need to. My kid is smoking now, what do I do? My kid is addicted to their phone now, what do I do? How do I take that off ramp? Because as one mom has said, if we're driving and we're on the wrong road, we're never going to get to where we need to go unless we take the off ramp or make a U-turn. And so if we want to get our kids to where they need to go and be healthy and have communication skills and be resilient, we need to help them take the off ramp. And we need to do that as parents. So this book explains that. And I do have a cheat sheet to this book. I still think schools need to adopt this, but this is the 5 steps summarized on that U-turn. How do you do it? And how do you do it safely? And I do say safely because that is part of that. And this is based on the work of child psychiatrists such as Dr. Victoria Dunkley, Dr. Adriana Stacy, Dr. Anna Lemke, some of those authors you might know, Dopamine Nation, as Dr. Anna Lemke wrote. She's an addiction specialist. So this goes through sort of the 5 points, and anybody can kind of take this, but we do still recommend it, reading the literature behind it. But it's not this, again, Jonathan Haidt says this all the time, it's not this foregone conclusion of, oh, the train has left the station, the toothpaste is out of the tube, we can't do anything now, they're using it, we just have to teach them how. As Jonathan Haidt says, I think, in one of his talks or at the end of his book, if a train has left the station and there's a bunch of kids on it and it's about to go off a cliff, we call the train back. And we can do that. There are healthy ways for kids to communicate, and we're not saying all digital technology is bad. We're saying social media, pornography, drug access, those are things we can all agree on, and that's what the Surgeon General is saying. You know, we can all agree that this is not stuff kids need to be exposed to. And kind of anything short of that, 2 physicians separately, one in Massachusetts and one up in Burlington, actually said anything short of that where we talk about teaching kids to responsibly use is wishful thinking. Because we can't responsibly use these products right now, the way that they're constructed.
Who are so great.
And there's legislation in the works to try and make better product design. It's called the Age Appropriate Design Code. So there is that effort. It's national. It was at the federal level, the Kids Online Safety Act, there was this attempt to make a safer design product. It got attacked, weakened by industry. It made it out of the Senate with only 3 naysayer votes. I think 93 votes in the positive. It got blocked in the House. They were that close. So, but we're going to go back to state legislation, absolutely. So we're not even saying that this phone-free school day is the one. We need many different policy tools, like anything. For smoking, you need the rule in school, no smoking, you need warning labels.
Age limits.
Yeah.
Age limits, thank you. Australia just made a law of not until 16.
Florida did too, right? Didn't Florida just ban
I haven't read it, so I don't know the
social
details.
media for, I know, it's wicked surprising, right? I think 14,
Okay, yeah.
something like that. Yeah, I mean, of all places, right? You're like, really?
Wow. We cannot be behind Florida, guys. Like, come on.
So I know that's like a point that sounds sometimes controversial to share and say about this whole, but there's a lot of language out there in different curriculum, unlike this one, that is sort of let's teach kids to be responsible digital citizens. And I say we need to teach kids to be responsible citizens. And the same norms of respect and collaboration that we use as citizens will apply with whatever product we use. So that's just debunking this myth. Like digital world, I say there is no digital world. We are all here on planet Earth with gravity. They say meet the kids where they are. I think they're right here in your living room on the couch, on their phone. They are right here. They're not in another world. Digital native, no. They are born the same way. Their basic physiology all functions the same. They are not digital natives. We have decided to give these children these products at a very young age and start using these products, but they are the same children. So all of that language I treat candidly as marketing language. So it's a different framework. And you can dig behind the curtains for whoever wants to dig. And a lot of these products of Be Internet Awesome, that's a curriculum that's put out by a group called ISTE. You can dig behind the curtains and you can look at who funds them. So that's something to just be very aware of when different people come and say, let's teach digital literacy and cyber civics, et cetera. Do pull back the curtains and do that kind of fine-tooth combing to make sure, are you actually getting just information that's based on independent science? Or is there kind of an agenda to say, okay, we know, like the filter on the cigarette, we know it's bad, but we're putting a filter on it. So please keep smoking, please keep using our product, is the message. Please use this product responsibly because we need you to keep using it. Because we're making a lot of money off of you using it. So,
Well,
sorry,
although
that was
I
a
guess-
tangent.
I guess I just say too, though, that in the schools, we're just talking about the school piece
We're just
today.
talking about the school piece,
You know,
yep.
so like, there are kids who are going to go home and have access to all of it.
Yes.
And without education around it,
Right.
which the school
Which
can
is
be a
still-
part of, or not, but I guess,
Right.
yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
acknowledging that, you know, like, some kids will have access to it, and they
Yes.
won't have the education unless that is a part of their curriculum, probably.
And the education piece was part of the original bill that was written last year. It just kind of got taken out because people thought that's too much to chew, so.
Right. And that, that may be coming down the road, I hope not too much longer.
Yeah.
But
What, the curriculum, what are you saying?
well, I mean, just, when I think about everything that schools do already, I mean, schools do a lot for kids because, and there are a lot of kids who come in, some pretty rugged situations. And, but this actually just feels like this could be in the wellness course, right? Or this could be in a course in middle school, really. Yeah.
Well, they are. I mean, I think they are, and to some extent, maybe not as
It's probably
thorough
already
as that.
happening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's probably already happening
Yeah.
in some places, but maybe not fast enough. we're catching up.
I just think, one thing that I don't understand is why there is pushback to this, given all this is together. Like, what is it that, I know that one of the things is a state mandate, that, I think there was a person in the room saying it's important that each community have discussions about that, and I completely agree. Although, when we were working with one of the principals in the state, the pushback I'm going to get, I do this as an administrator, is so great, I can't handle the stress. I wish the state just do this for us, take the hit. Because we're dealing with products that were created to addict. And so perhaps the pushback is because people are addicted. They don't want this thing taken from their child. It's stressful to inhibit, or sort of eliminate an addictive habit. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's the pushback. I'm not pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, it seems like once you understand the danger, it's easy enough to say, yeah, no, this is a no-brainer. I think that, yeah, for some people, maybe it's that they love their own phones so much that they can't do without them, or they think it's an American thing and it's freedom and I can give this to my cat. I don't know.
I hear number 5. I hear number 5 when I'm talking about it with other parents.
What's number 5?
Number 5 is about during school shootings or
Yep.
other emergencies
Yep.
like that. I think it's a false sense of connection or perceived control over the situation,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think it's a perceived control over
Yeah.
having access to their kids
Yeah.
in those moments.
Yep.
But I mean, I don't disagree with
And
anyone, but
what's-
that's what I usually hear.
What's the answer there?
You have reading glasses on,
Because
I
I
can't.
think that research shows that really can just create more volatility in the situation, right? Rather than, we do, well, I don't know if we've done any recently, lockdown drills and all that stuff, and which is just, it's horrible that we have to do that, number one. But having kids know what to do if something happens is the most important thing, and they need to act right then, and we all know that, right? Like, we act now, there's the door, you run, and whatever it happens to be, right, action has to be taken immediately. It's kind of funny because when I was doing my orientation up at the State House, there's sort of a new guy that's in charge of the cops, the Capitol Police, and they don't have any kind of lockdown stuff. And he said there needs to be something. I'm like, yeah, I can help you with that one.
So what does it say, the answer?
Oh, this is number 5. The notion of an active shooter in your child's school is terrifying. We should absolutely do everything in our power to reduce access to firearms, but these valid concerns must not be conflated with the phone-free school policy, which makes schools safer. The most powerful proactive factor against school violence is school connectedness. Student use cell phones during school day degrades vital social cohesion. On a practical level, the adults in the building need every ounce of attention from students during an emergency. Yeah, and I think that's what research shows too, that things could actually get more confusing, in the case of an event, people all just need to act and, be led by the adults there. And
It reminds me of the video that you sent me. Wasn't the bus driver having some type of medical emergency? And the only student that was aware of it was a kid who had a mom, kind of like me, who was like, no, you're not gonna have a cell phone. And he was the one, if you remember that video, that was
in Michigan.
right, and so they had him on, and he kind of talked about his mom and everything. But he was the only one on the bus who noticed the change in the bus driver having that medical emergency, jumped into the passenger seat and was able to stop the bus safely while so that was.
so paying attention sometimes is good.
Yeah, and there is a mom in Vermont that asked me, why is this bell the bell and not bus to bus?
Interesting.
And because a lot of young children, kindergarten, first grade, are seeing pornography
Yep.
on the school bus, on tablets and on phones that they're given. And I've heard of these cases across the state. People sometimes are ashamed to talk about it when it happens to their kid, and when they bring it up to the school administration, sometimes they're kind of shamed away, and the kid is blamed for being a bad kid. My response to that is, the kid is not bad. It's our children's job to be curious. And now we've given them access to a device where that curiosity is going to lead them to really harmful and dramatic content.
Yes.
So that mother has a point about wanting it to be bus to bus. I don't think we can legislate that. However, a school district at that level could make it stronger and talk about incorporating that for that reason as well.
I think that's just one of the greatest ironies, too, back in the day when you could get those magazines at the store, you had to be 18, right? Now it's like Wild West, right? It's whatever you want.
Yeah.
And that's the insane part to me. That's when I think, all right, this is where my brain starts hitting that brick wall. Like, wow, and just if you take that one little idea that there used to be an age limit, but now it's
Right.
anything you want.
So I guess we can just have maybe more of an open forum question dialogue. Although what is really important, and some of you heard me say this when you were coming in, is that, so we introduced this legislation in both the House and the Senate. We had a Democratic representative and a Republican senator take the lead. And this past week, they were onboarding their colleagues. And I was told that the House of Representatives got 50 co-sponsors, and that it was an even distribution, Republican, Democrat, in the House, and about 11 sponsors in the Senate. So it's about a third of each, a third of the Senate and a third of the House. So in practical terms, what we really need help with is anybody in this room who wants to just help. We are not paid lobbyists. I don't get paid a penny for this. This is volunteer. Eric, Mary, we're all volunteers, and we just need help getting more people to see why this needs to be legislation, why this is an equity issue, why this is going to be most fair for all kids. And so we need help. Basically, if you want to join the team, essentially we have people across the state working on this. We're going to be meeting like once a week on Zoom because we're all over, and really saying, where do we still need to educate, have more community events, and get people to ask their representatives and senators to sign on. Your 2 senators from this district need some encouragement.
Yep.
So, if you want to say that.
Yeah, I'll keep talking to him. I did broach this right after our initial meeting.
Right. And there's pushback about, we don't want to mandate.
Yeah, that was Seth's big thing. Well, anytime we mandate things for schools, but I kind of just let it go. I'm like, you'll see. I'm like, in my back of my brain, I'm like, you don't realize that the tide is rising.
What's the end of that sentence? Anytime we mandate things for school,
He's just against mandating, more things for schools. And I get that, but on the other hand, this to me seems like a real easy one.
Because it makes more work for the school, or like what is the?
I think it's just in principle for him.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't like to mandate.
Because schools should be able to
Make their own
those choices.
decisions.
Okay.
Right, and of course, he was representing Burton for an awful long time. He was our chair of the trustees, and the value of the independence is
Yeah.
huge for him.
Mm-hmm.
Rabid, but I just feel like it's a health issue. This is like, don't smoke in schools. This is like,
Yeah.
this is an easy one. This is, in fact, I do feel like there'd be a lot of parents saying thank you, at least for that.
Yeah, I can understand, not wanting to mandate for more schools. However, with all the information and all the
Yes.
supporting facts behind the effects,
Yeah.
I think it's, I support this, and I think it, ultimately, if it, I'm hoping that, 5 years, 10 years down the road, it'll have that kind of profound impact to say
Yeah.
that it was a good thing to do.
Yep, right. And I don't think we'll ever look back and say, "Ooh, that was bad." Like, I don't think we'll look back and say, "Oh, that was a mistake." No, I think that just the way everything has grown up around us, that we're taking action, and it's important, right? It's important for your kids.
And I'll just say, my kids are in juniors in high school and some are graduated.
Yeah.
And I could say that if I knew then what I know now, I would have made different decisions.
Yep.
Myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the legislation has been introduced, and so I guess what really actionable things can people do to help move it along? I guess I'm curious, like, what your recommendations would be for like very actionable steps like parents can take.
Well, writing to Seth and Rob,
Right, okay,
Seth Fongertz and Rob Plunkett, yep,
okay,
writing to them.
okay,
Yep, just a quick note, hey, I support this, I'm a parent,
okay.
I want to see this.
Because it's really gonna be up to them. I mean, is that kind of what the next,
Mhm.
okay,
Well, you need enough votes over half of the Senate or the House, so,
To move it forward.
we're a third there, right?
Okay.
And then actually after that happens, the governor would have to sign it.
okay,
So, yes, and encouraging any of your local representatives
Yep.
to reach out to, I guess, the lead sponsors of the bill and say, yes, I want you to do this, our kids need it, and getting your neighbors to do that. And then we also, as you see, this is why we have the goat picture. This kid wants phone-free schools in Vermont, tell your legislators you do too. That link right there is the link to then sign what we are calling a community support letter. And the letter just says in very clear language, it spells out those, 3 points of the legislation, bell to bell, exceptions for when there's medical or IEP needs, and then schools stop communicating with kids on social media. It spells that out, those 3 points, so it's clear it matches exactly the legislation, and then people can sign it and you put your town, because that letter is addressed to the entire legislature and the governor, so then they will see that. And then, so the more people signed on. We had 100 people as of yesterday across the state. And again, I myself am not on social media channels, so this is just myself and kind of other worker bee parents trying to push this out. We do need more signatures from this area to kind of show, and again, we'll get to just give evidence, like parents and community members want this. We had a student sign it. So that's actually something actionable as well. But it's not a lot to do, but if you do want to join our team, I try not to over email people. We had a meeting on January 3rd, and we'll have another one this week, and we usually will have Rob, Angela, some of the people that are in the State House be on those calls so that they can give us updates about what do we need to do. So our update right now is that we know who signed on, so we know who didn't, so we'll be able to sort of share as a team, like what communities do we need to focus on. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Good seeing you guys.
So like, in terms of actionable steps, you can, yeah.
Good.
We kept it to, sort of an hour, right, when we did that meeting last week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's, and convincing more parents to just say this is needed. Because obviously it hasn't happened already.
Right.
There are about 10 high schools in Vermont that do this now. And so there's, kids in 10 high schools that are benefiting from this,
Yeah.
but everybody else isn't.
See, that's what I guess I meant when I thought of Seth. I thought he doesn't understand that this is happening, right? There's going to be a groundswell. That more and more people are going to be, if it doesn't happen this year, it's going to keep going, right? People are going to want this.
Yeah. But we can't wait for schools to just do it because childhood is so short.
Yep.
48 months of high school is so short,
Yep.
and I feel like it's just not fair.
Yep.
And that's why, some people said, oh, it might take a couple years. We just need to pass this now and get it done.
Yep.
Because it's so simple. We have not attached a price tag to it. You see, again, phone locker, pencil pouch, so costs nothing.
Yep.
Kids could have so much fun getting engaged, you know, building the solutions.
There's woodshop right there. Although, you know, of all the things that you said that were really poignant, what you said is going to stick with me.
What'd you
Haunt
say?
me a little bit. I would do things differently.
Hmm.
I mean, I think I'm lucky because my kids were sort of on the cusp. Like phones weren't that big when they were going through. Maybe they had flip phones. It was just before that. So. Nope.
Robin?
Reiterate why this group in particular really important projects that are house education work.
We can't hear you very well, Robin.
What?
If you could speak a little louder, Robin.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, better.
This group in particular in the Manchester area is really important because isn't the House or the Senate chair of Manchester rep?
Seth is the chair of the Education Committee. Yeah, Seth Bongartz is chair of the Education Committee, Senate. Yeah.
Yes, and he's Manchester, correct?
Yes.
Right, and I'm not sure what his stance is on this. I don't think he's more amending. So I think
Right.
this constituency is really important for their voices to be heard.
Yeah.
What about Kathleen? Where does she?
She definitely indicated to me that she said if Angela's doing this, then I'm behind it. So yeah, she'll be on board. Yeah. In fact, I'm driving her Tuesday morning up to Montpelier, so I'll make sure that I mention this meeting.
I really think this is a matter of like, most parents probably do support this.
That's what I think.
And they just don't know that it needs support to make it happen. And then there's like, you know, the louder voice, you know, the louder, fewer voices get heard, but there's, I feel like overwhelmingly, I hear parents saying, I wish there were just no schools at any school function ever, period. Not just bell to bell, but like school dances, school sporting events,
Anything, right.
Oh, but I know that's another story. But anyway, I think the support exists, people just don't know, so
That they need to just, yeah.
I'm gonna
Hold their hand
yammer
up,
about
yeah.
it to everybody, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I'll do.
Yeah, definitely take a picture of the link and you'll have that.
Yeah.
Yep. Good. All right.
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.